I've been getting a lot of false positives, and even the auto. Ladies and gents, 2024 Mazda CX-90 Turbo S Premium Package, MSRP right around 57K. I think it's the second or third highest trim option available for this vehicle, and we've got beautiful styling on the exterior. White Napa leather on the inside. Light colored wood trim, accent pieces here. They did such a good job. And I know that coughing up close to 60K for a Mazda may sound like too much money, but they're definitely punching well above their weight class here. This is more entry luxury than anything else. The real standout feature here that I was super excited to try out is the new powertrain. This is an inline six with a mild hybrid. You can also get a 4-cylinder hybrid. This is their inline six, rear-wheel drive based all-wheel drive architecture. And the first time we're seeing it is here in the CX-90, their new full-size or their new flagship CUV. 3 rows. And I've gotten a few days to test this vehicle, so not a comprehensive review, but I'm going to tell you my first impressions. Big thanks to Cardinale Way Mazda for making this review possible. I actually had some issues with my CX-50. It looks like the front driver's side lower control arm had a bushing failure. They're going to be sending me some videos to show some close-up. I love that their service department does that so I can actually see what's going on. And they did a great job handling that. It's all under warranty, so no cost to me. And they gave me this as a loaner. So I've been enjoying it for the last few days. And first impressions, this feels far more luxurious than my CX-50. I mean, rightfully so, right? That is a different class of vehicle. It's also much smaller. Everything here feels really well put together. Really nice materials. A couple notches up from my CX-50. The steering wheel is actually the same buttons and controls from my CX-50. Like the buttons on the steering wheel have these little center notches that help with the tactility, so you can toggle up and down. I drove a CX-5 recently that had the more old school buttons. Really appreciate this. The center control unit here for the infotainment is this the same one that I have in the CX-50. But the screen, the thing that surprised me is I like the size of it. It's also not too far. In the CX-50, a common complaint is that it's too far to reach, and it is both touch and you can also use this little joystick. But the resolution, if you look really closely, there's a little bit of pixelation that I can notice even sitting back here. So I don't notice that in my CX-50 at all. I feel like the CX-50 and this might have similar resolution, but given that this is a larger screen size, you can notice the pixel more. But again, not everyone's going to be pixel peeping when they're driving their car, so not a big deal, just a small thing I noticed. As you can see, their driving assist technology is more advanced here. You can actually see the vehicles on the display here in the dash, in the gauge cluster. You can see where various vehicles are. And unlike the CX-50, which is a combination of analog and digital, this is full digital. And they did a great job here. Nice black levels, a nice contrast, nice and crisp, and it looks great. In terms of actually driving this, the mild hybrid makes the start-stop less disruptive. So you can actually get that little roll before the engine turns on. It's a little bit more seamless. However, the transmission paired with this inline six-cylinder, this is, I believe, an 8-speed torque converter, it's a little bit hesitant at times. And I noticed that when you're either manually shifting using the paddles, or if you're starting from being stationary, there's sometimes a little bit of hesitation. And it almost feels something about the character, I don't know how to describe it. It feels in the direction of being truck-like, with the hesitancy, a little bit jerkiness at times. But once you're going, this inline six, super smooth, joy to use, 340 horsepower, plenty of push. I was actually a bit hesitant getting behind the wheel of this because not too long ago, Savage Geese, YouTubers that I definitely respect, their opinion on a lot of these matters, they commented that this is too stiff of a vehicle, and trying to bring in the Mazda Zoom Zoom to a large 3-row CUV like this is doesn't quite land. But after driving it, I feel that this actually very much aligns with what I would want in a CUV. Now, I don't need by the way, these cross traffic alerts I've been getting a lot of false positives. And even the auto emergency braking, I was reversing into a parking spot and it just slammed on the brakes, even though I had several feet until reaching the curb. So that's not quite dialed in on this vehicle. It does seem a bit more intrusive than on my CX-50. Granted, on my CX-50, I don't have front cross traffic alert, only rear. This one does have front as well. But going back to the actual driving dynamics, I don't need a 3-row CUV. Two-row would be fine. I love my CX-50, but the issue is that it can only tow, I believe, 3,500 pounds. And I want to be able to tow my vehicle, probably a sub 3,000 pound sports car like a GR86, S2000, Mazda Miata, to and from the racetrack. This, with a tow capacity of 5,000 pounds, can, if I get a lightweight trailer, it can just fit the bill. But they're coming out with a new CX-70, which is going to be above the CX-50, and below this, it'll also be 2 rows. That might actually be the perfect vehicle for me. Also going to use the inline-6 rear-wheel drive architecture, supposedly. That's what the rumors are saying, at least. And I am definitely looking forward to that. Even this vehicle, though, with the second row captain's chairs, you can fold them down completely, and I can still fit in my bike very easily. Actually, even more easily. It's a larger rear space compared to my CX-50. So, very practical. With the third row up, the cargo space in the trunk is pretty limited. But if you do need more space, you can just fold down the seats. You've got those little pull tabs, and should be plenty for most. So going back to the driving dynamics, I got a bit sidetracked. It is definitely more stiff than comparable vehicles. If you love the way the Telluride rides or things of that class, this is going to feel much more stiff, but it's also more responsive and sporty. But I don't think it's in a punishing way. I think Mazda toes the line very well between comfort and sporty responsiveness. Because if you go full comfort, then of course you lose a lot of the initial turn-in, the responsiveness. The vehicle feels heavier when you go too far in the comfort direction. When you go too far sporty, then of course you're going to have the opposite issue where it's not as comfortable and people can find it harsh. And I think Mazda has toed the line beautifully here, which is why I'm extra excited for that CX-70, which is probably going to be my next vehicle, but of course we'll see once that finally is announced. Really loving the interior. It's a little bit dark now, so it might be harder to appreciate, but they do have some ambient lighting underneath these little trim pieces on the door cards. The Napa white leather, super nice to look at, super nice to touch. One thing I thought was interesting is for the climate control, you actually control the temperature with these buttons. You can press it down here and heat it up here, which is not as intuitive because I want to just lift a toggle up to warm it and move the toggle down to cool it, right? But here you have 2 different buttons. So you press this button to cool, this button to go up. Of course, heated steering wheel as well as seats. The wireless charger here is in the front where my phone is, right here. But the issue is that similar to my CX-50, the wireless charging, if you have a large camera bump like the iPhone 15 Pro, it's not going to work. And speaking of the iPhone and this resolution on the display, I was thinking that maybe it's because wireless versus wired CarPlay, but I actually disabled my Wi-Fi and Bluetooth on my phone and made sure it was the wired connection, same issue, where you can still notice a little bit of pixelation, but again, most people are not going to be pixel peeping. To show you what I'm talking about, you can see there's a little bit of a delay. I'm going to downshift, downshift. We'll put a downshift each time. Not the smoothest shifts, but not problematic either. Nothing really to write home about with the transmission, if I'm being honest. I was expecting a bit more of an upgrade from the prior gen 6-speed. And I'm hoping that with a bit more time and tuning, they can really refine this. Actually normally drive like this, a little bit more dimmed display, but that's at the brightest setting. That's the dimmer setting. If you're wondering about the steering, it is very direct. It feels great, but unlike the CX-50, you're not going to have that incredible feedback. It also is not nearly as heavy as the CX-50, so for some of you, you're going to love that because the CX-50 steering was definitely polarizing. I personally love it, but of course, I enjoy the sporty driving experience. This is lighter and not as teeming with feedback, but still feels very natural and a joy to use. Transmission tunnel here is a lot wider, and it feels more premium, more elegant with the way that they don't have piano, gloss piano black, which I very much appreciate, and the way this is set up, super premium. But the gear selector has a strange, you have to tilt it left to get into park. So apparently the person who had this loaner before me, they pushed it forward, as you do in most cars, thinking that it was in park. It was in reverse. They got out, and then they reversed into someone else's door, which is why, I'm not sure if you noticed in the beginning of the video, there's a little bit of damage on that front passenger door. Yeah, you can really appreciate that ambient lighting on this side. Beautiful spot to be. Really love what Mazda's doing. A few other things. One is that the seats, not finding them as comfortable actually, because the headrest pushes my head a little bit further forward than I would like, and there's a concavity to the middle of the seat. So you can adjust your lumbar only how far out it goes, but not the height of it. So hopefully the lumbar support positioning, that the little air cushion they have in there, is positioned properly for you. But the issue for me is that a little bit too much of a concavity at the thoracic spine. So it's really accentuating kyphosis, which is that rounding of the upper spine. When I want to have good posture as I'm driving, it's really encouraging me to just roll my shoulders forward and have a really rounded upper back, which I don't like. I think that would be ameliorated by having the headrest adjustable so I could push it back a little bit, which you're not able to do. You can only go up and down. And I've adjusted it a little bit higher so that my head can go a little bit further back, but still having a bit of a problem. The other thing is their moonroof here, which is larger. I'm pretty sure it's a little bit larger. Yeah, quite a bit larger actually than my CX-50. Has this center beam, which may bother some people, but again, it's for support and rigidity, and that's a large part. Being able to maintain chassis rigidity is what allows the car to drive better. So part of the secret sauce for Mazda making large vehicles like this CUV and even my CX-50 handle in the way that they do. Now going into sport mode, it's going to hold a higher gear. It's going to kill our fuel efficiency a little bit. Downshift's still a little bit slow, but the upshifts seem faster in sport mode if I'm not mistaken. Again, this is a very just first impressions drive, guys. I've just been driving mostly on these suburban roads here in Vegas. I haven't been able to explore it on twisties or in the kinds of manners that I would like to for a small CUV. But those are my first impressions. Let me know what you guys think. We'll have a more in-depth review of the CX-90 in a future video. Much love, my friends, and I'll see you all in the next one.